welcome back to another episode of Rocking Midlife, the podcast. It's been a hot minute since I was last here with you, but we are back now. We have a studio happening. I've moved in, the microphones are unpacked, and we're ready to get going with season 3. And I have a wonderful couple joining us today. So I'd like you to welcome Kim and Mike.
Thank you. We're so glad to be with you.
Good to be here.
It's great to have you here, guys. Can you just tell us really quickly where you're from?
Sure.
We are in Austin, Texas.
Fantastic. And I mean, this is just the beauty of telecommunication, isn't it? That I can talk to these incredible people and do this from my home here in New Zealand. So I'm going to tell you all about Mike and Kim, and then we're just going to dive in because the topic we're talking about today, aging parents, and managing aging parents is so critical, and it doesn't matter where you are in the world, at some point you're going to face this. So let's tell you all about Kim and Mike. So over the past 5 years, Mike and Kim Barnes have found themselves navigating problems they never saw coming from their parents. Alzheimer's, pacemakers, COVID, pneumonia, and the tough decision to move parents into retirement communities. Now, this is something we talk about all the time in our Rocking Midlife group too. They've learned to balance the many facets of parenting aging people, aging parents, not aging people, although there's probably another business there actually for people who need help.
That's right.
Including medical, financial, and everyday life decisions, emotional roller coasters, because let's face it, this isn't just a job you have to do like gardening. This is something so close to the heart, isn't it? And protecting their parents from scams and more, all while parenting their college kids and people listening, and you may even have younger kids, grandkids, trying to juggle it all and do it successfully. So Mike and Kim have each spent 30 years on TV. Kim's TV career includes years as an award-winning reporter, and I'm feeling the pressure, and as a news anchor. And Mike's includes 29 years as an award-winning sportscaster. So they've realized that so many adult children go through the same trials. So you can have these amazing high-flying careers like these guys have. You can be a stay-at-home mum. All are fantastic, but all of us are on the same platform when it comes to dealing with aging parents. So we're going to dive right on in. Mike and Kim, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you started this business of helping people parent their parents.
It happened a little bit really just because of our personal experiences, and I mean, kind of a little bit by accident, if you will, because we just realized that as we have been sitting in, I've been in one room, he's been in another room, and I could hear both of us talking to our parents about different things about, oh, mom, don't click on that link. And Mike saying, hey, dad, did you get your appointment scheduled or whatever it is, that I would sometimes just sort of pause and think, wow, that's funny. We're both doing this. And we would think we're the only people doing it in the middle of our workday, waiting on a call from maybe one of our kids with a question. And what we started realizing is that so many people are going through the exact same thing, yet nobody talks about it.
Yeah.
We both went through the process of moving parents from living at home in their own homes into independent living. And for my mom and dad, it wasn't that hard, but my dad was a little reluctant because he pictured a nursing home like my grandfather lived in back in the 1980s. And he didn't realize it's more like a college dorm with lots of activities and 3 meals a day. It's great. Who wouldn't want something like that? And Kim's mom was very reluctant, wanted to stay in the house she lived in, but then finally was convinced by Kim's uncle, actually, her mother's brother, that it would be better. And she finally did. So we went through that process, which was easier than it sounds, I guess, in some ways. But then my mom has Alzheimer's, and my sister and I started talking to my dad about we need to move mom into memory care because it's killing you, and it's so hard on you taking care of her 24/7. And we realized when we started to move her that we were so overwhelmed. We thought we were prepared, like, oh, this is like finding an apartment. But we were so overwhelmed that we didn't know the questions to ask, what to look for, what the red flags might be. I told Kim at the time, I said, if we feel prepared, but we still feel so overwhelmed, then most people should feel so overwhelmed even more so. So let's see if we start some type of group, maybe on Facebook, that can help people answer the questions.
That's fantastic. And Wow, I mean, I resonate with so many of those just from my own experiences. And then you throw in the fact with someone like me, I'm living in another country to my parents and in-laws, and it makes it even more challenging, particularly over the last 3 years when we weren't allowed to travel. So I haven't been able to go over and see them. So so many things we could go into, and we're going to come back. I'm going to put in a little advertisement now. Folks listening in or watching, you need to stay tuned, because we're going to be doing another interview with Kim and Mike where we talk specifically about the tech side and avoiding scams, because that's a huge one for parents. But in the meantime, we're going to talk a little bit more about your story, because I know so many will relate to it. So how did you find it? Was it challenging trying to raise your kids and juggle parents? How did you navigate this?
Some days better than others. We were fortunate that when most of this started really happening, we had one kid already in college and the other one was toward the end of high school. So that when some of this really started, and so fortunately they were much more independent. We have people in our group often that talk about how the challenges of still having young kids at home.
Yeah.
I can't imagine trying to drive carpool and all the activities and trying to do some of the things that I'm doing with my mom. My mom is single, and so that adds some different challenges that are different than when with Mike and his parents still being together after 62 years of marriage.
Wow.
So I think some of it was trying to, I don't know that I do a great job with it every day, because when mom calls, I answer because I just never know.
Yeah.
And when my kids call, they're in those life stages of young adulthood that I feel like I need to answer the phone too, but it can be really overwhelming when you are also working.
Yeah.
And potentially for most people, a lot of people in our group, they're at the height of their career.
Yeah.
And so how do you manage it all? And so I think some of it is really trying to stay organized is, I think, one. And I think the other thing is the more prepared you are with the things that you can do in advance, that will make it much easier when there might be something that comes up that's a little bit more of a crisis situation.
Yeah. And I think the other thing we've done is we've tried to keep the kids involved, not like we've, had a whip and said, oh,
great.
you have to do this work too. Our son is really good with technology. So when my dad calls and says, talks to me and says, son, the printer's not working, I don't know what I do. I said, Brandon, help your grandfather. And he talks him through it. Or if there's a problem with the iPhone, my son will talk him through it. So just getting them involved and having them have kind of a share of the ownership and know that, it's their grandparents. And if they can help, they love them and they care for them. And if they can help, it's more worthwhile for them as opposed to just watching us do all the work.
Yeah, I think that's really important, isn't it? Because we hear about it sometimes when they look at like Western societies to some of the Eastern Asian societies where elderly people are still very much part of the family unit and are respected and honored. And I think that's really key to be encouraging our children, like you said, help out grandma and grandpa, connect with your grandparents, and just encouraging that so they have that relationship that they're going to remember forever. So it's just so important. Wow, so many things to go down, so many rabbit holes we can go down. What would be the first thing you'd suggest? You talked about planning ahead. What would be a couple of really easy steps people could take to start planning ahead?
One is start having conversations with your parents. And sometimes in a way when it can be kind of a casual one where it's not a, hey, we need to sit down and have a meeting. Have you done all of these things?
Yeah.
Right. It's not an intervention, but how can you, especially as you're learning new things, hey, we realize that we need to update our will, or that we haven't done a power of attorney, or we need to have some of these medical forms filled out for us, for our children.
Yeah.
And hey, mom and dad, I realize we haven't had that conversation with you. Or is it conversations about housing? Where might they like to live if given options? Do they really want to stay at home? Might they consider moving into an independent living? Or if the situation arises, what are they open to if they aren't capable or able to safely live at home anymore? Do you want to live with me? Are you open to a retirement community and assisted living? Kind of having some of those conversations I think are so important.
Yeah. And you really have to have the tough financial conversations at some point. My dad was an accountant growing up. He worked for the same company for 49 years. Wow. And he was so secretive about money when I was growing up. It's amazing. I knew nothing. I mean, he taught me.
It's private.
He taught me, but he didn't talk about his own.
Yeah.
And then as I got older, he started opening up a little bit more and telling me about, what he would make and how much money he had and how much money he had for he and my mom to try to live, and then to try to take care of mom as her Alzheimer's was getting worse. So it's good for the kids, the adult kids like us, to just have a little bit of an idea, because here in America, we have Social Security. Well, if your Social Security check is all you get, and it's roughly $2,000 a month,
if you're lucky,
then it's hard for you to for the kid to say, well, Dad, I think need to go live in this place. It's only $4,000 a month. That's not a problem at all. And the dad's going, 4,000, I don't have that much money. Well, if the kid knows that, if the adult children know that, again, it can help them plan in advance and know, okay, mom and dad can live here, or mom and dad need to live here. Oh, mom and dad are going to have to live with us because they don't have any savings. They don't have anything. So just so they have an idea about what they can afford.
Yeah, that's really good. It's confronting though, isn't it? Because when you're having these conversations with your parents, you kind of get a little glimpse of your own mortality as well, don't you? It's like, oh my gosh, when they're gone, it's me next, and how many years have we got, and all of that. But I remember when I was in Sydney 3 years ago, seeing my parents, and my dad took me down the office, and because my dad wasn't an accountant, he was actually in irrigation. He was like an engineer who drew up like golf courses and irrigated them and things like that. So he was very precise. And he's done an amazing job, very conservative, done an amazing job over the years of monitoring their investments. They just had small investments, but enough to help him and mum still have a good life. So they've still got their caravan, although their days are coming very much to an end now at 80 and 83 with driving a big caravan around Australia. But he took me into the office and he pulled out the filing cabinet. He said, right, and now just so you know, this information about my portfolio, and this is the house deeds, and this is who you need to contact. And my initial reaction, I've got to admit, was, I don't want to know this. I don't want to face this. I don't want to even face the fact that you're not going to be here. Right. So I know I really struggled with that. And I'm sure you've met other people the same. How do you get them past the emotions of the situation to do the practical side of it?
I think in that situation, once you get past that little bit of that emotion, is realizing what a gift that is.
Yeah.
That is such a huge gift that they have, that he has done all of that planning and has all that paperwork, if you will, because it'll make it so much easier for you if you are trying to step in and help them.
That's true.
We have so many people in our group that their parents don't want to have these conversations. They don't want to talk about if they have a will. They don't want a power of attorney. They don't want some of that. And the children are sort of at a loss, because if something happens, when somebody passes away without a will in the United States, it's a mess. Yeah. It can be a really laborious process, where if you just have this paperwork, just the legal documents done, it's a much easier. And so I think that it's coming across and thinking about certainly that's emotional, because we don't want to think that way.
Yeah.
But if we can think about it, that, okay, this is going to allow me to be able to help them better. And I'm so grateful that they have done this versus not.
Yeah.
Because it's so hard if they don't.
And it's kind of admitting and knowing the fact that when something bad happens to mom and dad, especially when they die, it's not fun. It's a crisis situation where your mind is on that, and you don't have time for anything else. And my dad, 25 years ago, he gave me the phone number of two of his friends. One's an attorney, one's an accountant. He says, if something happens to me, call these two people because they're going to help you.
Wow.
And I realized at the time he was in his 60s. Like, I was hoping he was a long time away from dying. He's lived again so long since then, but it was a gift to me that I realized that, when he passes away, it's going to be such a tough time for me, but he's given me this gift that here's two people that are trusted friends of mine that can help you get through that tough time. And just knowing that's an incredible gift. And if all parents can think about ways, no matter what your age, of a way to give that type of gift to your kids so that they're more prepared, whether it's having a will, power of attorney, medical directive, whatever it is, or just the phone number of an attorney and an accountant, just so that process is going to be so much easier, because it's going to be so hard no matter what. It'll be so much easier knowing that there's help out there and your parent has helped get it for you.
I love that. I love how you've reframed that from being something that's to be scared of, to being realizing that you're receiving a gift. You're so right. I really love how you've reframed that. And Well, that is exactly what my father has done. On my husband's side, it's not quite so easy with his father because he is still very, very secretive about that stuff. And I know that, my sister-in-law, who's doing the majority of helping him at the moment, and my other brother-in-laws all in Sydney are very much struggling because he's in his 90s, but is so secretive about everything that we're actually dreading the mess when he does go, because it's going to be messy. And that's a shame, whereas hopefully my parents, it won't be an issue. One thing we've got here in New Zealand, and I know it's like this in Australia as well, because my parents looked into it, like you're talking about these independent living communities and, like retirement homes or over 55 type places. Now, they look amazing. I lost my best friend, my closest friend, back in 2019. And my parents were over because she died on the morning of my son's wedding, and which was very, very poignant. And so I took my parents to go visit her parents straight afterwards. And one of the things that my girlfriend Darlene had done, which was absolutely amazing, because she was a very precise planner, prepper, everything. She had everything worked out. She had got her parents out of their home, managed the selling of their property, and got them into this beautiful retirement village over on the north side of Auckland. Now, beautiful home. So I took my parents to visit them, and they ended up showing my parents around. And it's like what you said. I think my dad in particular was thinking nursing home, but there was like a woodworking shed and, gardening and all these sports and outings. And my parents got so excited. But when they went back to Australia to look for something similar, it's the first time we'd ever had that conversation with them and seen them actually, like, oh, this isn't so bad. Nothing was affordable. And what Darlene had managed to do with her parents all those years ago was find something back then that was affordable. It's almost impossible now to do that over here. People can't afford these assisted living places unless they've done really well. I don't know if you're up with the economy of New Zealand, but we actually have reasonably low wages and very, very high cost of living. And it's making it challenging for families to look at their elderly parents and go, what do I do with them? Do you have many people that look at intergenerational living, bringing them into the home and working with them? What tips would you have for people who have to go that way, who can't afford to put them out anywhere in any of these lovely villages?
There are a lot of people that the finances become an issue where if you don't have there, and in the United States, there is a wide range of ones that are super fancy and very, very expensive, and others that are a little more modest and not quite so expensive, and maybe a little bit more expensive than a nice apartment because you're getting meals and stuff like that. So there's a pretty good range. So that's good. But we see a lot of people in our group whose parents hadn't saved properly, or something happened to where they don't have the finances. And so they do end up coming and living with them. And there can be some challenges. Sometimes we see situations where people might go in and they move and they find a new home, and maybe the parents help purchase that home, and the adult kids, it's always funny when you say kids, because you think like my kids, but it's like the adult children, the aging parent and the adult child may go in together and purchase a home, or the adult child might just purchase a different home that's more designed so that it might work better when you have your parents living with you. Because the challenge is that they're still wanting to be kind of independent. They may not want to have a bedroom right next to yours, I mean, that might not be an option, but you want to still be able to give them kind of their independence. But I think that for those that are living with them, it can be pretty challenging. Some of them will bring people into the home maybe to help assist, which can help if you have the finances for that. But really, so much of it depends on the extra help you can get is by your finances. But there are some people and some of it I think is cultural, as far as just automatically that's what you do when your parents get to a certain age and they can't live at home. They just come with you. That may be how you were raised. You may have been raised in a home with your grandparents. And so, I think some of that is what you're used to, what seems familiar to you, and what you're most comfortable with.
You just have to know that any family dynamics that you have or had when you were little chances are they're going to come back up.
Mhm.
They may have been hidden as you've just been visiting with mom and dad,
Yeah.
living in different places for the last 30 or 40 or 50 years. But now they're going to come back up. So we had one person in our group who kind of complained, vented, because it's a great place. Our Facebook group is a great place to vent about things that are really bothering you with taking care of mom and dad. They said, mom and dad are now living with me, and my mom is driving me crazy because she says my house is not clean enough. It's like, are you kidding? What are you doing? You're living with me. And you understand where they're coming from, and you can almost visualize this is probably someone that when they were a teenager, mom was all over them about, your room's a mess, that type of thing, and it comes back up, and you just have to be ready for that, because we all have different family dynamics. We all have different relationships with mom and dad and with each other, and just how we all interact. And how I do it with my mom and dad is different than Kim and her mom, and it's all different. And you just have to be ready for that, because how you do it now, chances are it's going to be similar how it was before. And if it wasn't good before, or wasn't good enough to where there was some uneasiness before, it could come back.
Oh yeah, I can see that. Sorry, I'm pausing and thinking. You're going to laugh because we're actually doing the intergenerational thing right here now. So my son and his wife and our little 18-month-old grandson are living here. We pulled together and bought a bigger property. But the idea, we do have kind of separate wings a little bit. But the idea is eventually my husband and I will build ourselves basically our own granny flat. That's what they're called down this end of the world, which is like a self-contained area just for us, just to give them space and us space. Because I know we're all kind of feeling at the moment there's a bit of, head butting happening now and then, as we have to just work around having two families sharing space.
Sure. Well, and I think what you find too is that they're still your parents, and they're used to being your parents.
Yes.
And they still look at you as the child, whether you're 50 or 60. You're still their little girl, right? And so that can create some sort of challenges, because they may not even think that you're capable of, well, I don't know if you know about POAs or powers of attorney. And the son says, I'm an attorney. I know that stuff, but I'm still your little kid. And so I think that that's part of the challenge too, is it, and the balance, because they still are your parent. So how do you have that respect for them still as their parent, but also yet when do I need to sort of step in a little bit, and the roles, kind of reverse a little bit.
I talked to someone today in our group who's saying that their mom is being a little too frivolous with money. She's spending too much money, and she doesn't have that much. So the child, again, the adult child, has to come down on mom and say, Mom, you need to start saving your money. Stop spending so much, which is so reverse from what you're used to. And some adults, aging parents, how do you want to call them, but they're not used to that. They're not ready for that. And I've been very lucky, because my dad's been very open most of the time to what my sister and I have suggested for him, whether it's where they live, or money, or where they eat, or anything like that. He's been very receptive. But I got to tell you a quick story, that my birthday last August, it was the day before my birthday, and Kim and I and our two kids are going out to eat, and I get a phone call. My dad had not been feeling great. My sister took him to the doctor. The doctor ran some tests and sent him home. Well, right when he got home, the doctor calls my sister and says, get him to the hospital now. He needs a pacemaker. So they go to the hospital. And again, I'm about 3.5 hours away. So it's not like I can just run over there. So they go to the hospital. And because of COVID, the hospital's packed. They have no rooms for anything. And the cardiologist is not working that day. So they're talking to my dad about, well, we can try to find you a bed and keep you overnight, and you can talk to the cardiologist tomorrow, or we can just send you home. Well, my sister says, call brother. So my dad's on the phone with me. I'm standing in the parking lot outside a restaurant. I'm saying, Dad, I do not want to wake up on my birthday tomorrow morning and find out that you died because you went home when you need a pacemaker.
And you should have stayed at the hospital.
Please stay at the hospital so someone can take care of you, please. He's like, yeah, son. Okay. I understand. Okay. He hangs up, and he looks at my sister and says, take me home.
And he went home.
He spent the night at home in their independent living place. My mom's gone to memory care. So he's by himself with no one to take care of him or to watch him. And luckily he woke up the next morning. He was fine. He got his pacemaker. He's feeling better since then. But again, it's him being, and I've told him since then, Dad, you're selfish. Dad, you're stubborn. He's 84 years old. He was a successful businessman. He's earned that right. And we just have to accept that in some ways that, they are mom and dad. We want them to do what's best for them, but it's not always that easy because they have their own way of seeing things and doing things.
Yeah. See, we're talking about some of the bigger battles here, like where they're going to live and their medical things, like you said. What about the smaller battles, particularly with dads? Things like, look, Dad, your driving's just not cutting it anymore. What do you do with that one? Because that is hitting at the heart of their ego, I've found. What's your advice for people who are facing that one?
I've been lucky that my dad is still able to drive.
Yeah.
So I haven't had to take the keys away, but it was different with Kim's mom.
My mom had eye surgery, so that prevented her from driving for a while. And then once she had recovered a little bit, we frankly were a little bit concerned about her ability to continue driving, and we didn't think it was a great idea.
Yeah.
And so we would say, you shouldn't drive. But every once in a while I would talk to her and I would say, so what'd you do today, Mom? And she'd say, oh, well, I just took the car down the street because I wanted just to make sure that the battery doesn't die, which she knew she wasn't supposed to drive it, but she just said, oh, I just went down the street and back.
Yeah.
In her case, I was able to appeal to the fact that, Mom, I get that, but just imagine if you were to hit a kid in the neighborhood that's riding their bike, or you were to hurt somebody else, you couldn't live with yourself. So I kind of appealed from that perspective of not as much do it for you or not do it for other people, if that makes sense. Not as much for you. And certainly because of rideshare opportunities now, it's a little easier because you can still have quite a bit of freedom. I know people who have given up their cars and they take Lyft or Uber everywhere for business because they realize it's actually cheaper than the car payment and they can actually get work done while they're doing it. So I think that the good news is that has become a more normal thing. So Mom was able to do that for a while. And so she was able to still go places. And it got to a point where I don't feel comfortable with her doing that anymore. So she's not doing that. But so appealing to kind of their sense of safety for others and responsibility. And then frankly, because I knew everybody's different. I knew this would appeal to her where I would say, hey, no more insurance payments, no more, no more car insurance, no more maintenance, no more gas and all of that. And
actually saving a little money.
Right. And while that might not
the
even
way her mom is, that worked.
Right. So I think it's figuring out, what is it about driving that is the thing that they don't want, why they don't want to give it up. Maybe that helps you kind of come in the side door, if you will, and figure out what might appeal to them. Because I think is probably one of the hardest things because it is, exactly tied to your independence. Yeah. If I can, just run out and go somewhere versus, oh, I gotta, either have to call a friend or I've got to call a ride share or whatever. And so I think that is a really big key to our identity and our independence.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things that I really love about what my parents have done, because it is concerning for me living over in another country. They're in the middle of Sydney. Both of my brothers live up the coast, so no one's close to them. And Sydney suburbs are horrendous to get around. The traffic's just awful. But what I do love is they've put some little limits on themselves. So they will not leave anywhere before 9 a.m, which means most of the school traffic, business traffic's gone. And they will always be home before 3 p.m, which is when you get the next lot of school traffic, business traffic. So that makes me sleep a little bit easier, knowing that at least, that they book their medical appointments in that time, in that little time frame and do that. But I'm dreading the day.
And I think maybe that's a great idea of a way to start helping to control it a little bit, by giving them some, are you open to at least the idea of let's limit when we drive?
Yeah.
And then, if they're not, then that's a different conversation. But I think that if you can kind of help not wean them off, but, just do the things that make you feel safe about it. But and I've also seen people in our group that have said that their parent actually wrote a letter when they were to themselves, whether it was when they were, 60 or so, and just, wrote a letter that said, when my kids tell me that it's time to quit driving, you need to listen. And that they have said, I've written this letter. And when you feel like it's time for me to not be able to drive anymore, give me this letter.
Wow.
So that hopefully
Yeah.
Hopefully.
I'll still agree and read it and go, okay, you're right. Rather than like, no, who is that person who wrote that? I don't know. Yeah. But I think that, again, there's little things like that in that preparation. And again, when you have those conversations, when they are completely capable and they're going on vacation and they're doing all this stuff, be able to say like, hey, just kind of for fun, like sometimes you can bring these up in just a casual conversation. Hey, just curious, if you ever got to the point where we didn't think it was safe for you to drive, what would be the best way for us to tell you that?
Oh, I like
and that way you're asking it, 15 years, 20
Way ahead
years,
of time.
way ahead of time. But you've got that in the back of your mind so that you can say like, okay, mom, you told me, and I've got it in writing or I recorded it. Now you can record it right easily on your phone. I recorded it and you told me that we're at that day now. And will you honor what you said in the letter that you wrote or in what you told me 20 years ago?
Yeah.
That is fantastic. What great ideas. It really does come down to the more you can plan, the more you can have those conversations early. It really is key to it, isn't it? To managing.
Yes.
Wow. There's so much more we could go into, but I do want to ask you one more question. How do you manage your own emotions? So we talked about the practicalities of your, being the sandwich generation, looking after the kids and the parents. But what about you as a person? How do you manage the ups and downs there, like seeing your parents deteriorate, particularly if they've got dementia or Alzheimer's, like my mother-in-law had dementia, and that was hard to watch her deteriorate and forget who we were in those last few years. What are your suggestions for people who are really struggling emotionally with this?
Yeah, I have to admit that my mom has Alzheimer's, and when I go to see her, she doesn't recognize me at first. I have to say, "Hey, mom, it's your son, Mike. How are you doing?" And then she kind of warms up. You can just see in her eyes; she has no idea who I am, and that's not easy. That's not fun. I don't wish it on anybody. But you almost have to take the mindset that that's not what she chose to do. It's not my fault. It's not like she says,
that son.
Mike was he was such a little brat when he was a boy that I don't want to even recognize him when he's in his 50s. It's not her choice. I know she still loves me somewhere deep inside. It's just a matter of that's what the disease has done to her. So you have to take that mindset and just try to help them as much as they can. So the last time I visited mom a couple of weeks ago, when I first got there, apparently she'd been having a bad day and they warned me ahead of time when I got to her memory care place. And as soon as I got to see her and told her who I was, and she kind of warmed up a little bit, but she was kind of mad about, I don't understand why I'm here. And I said, Mom, you won't believe this. Your granddaughter, Taylor, is about to move to New York City. And everything just changed. And suddenly she's thinking about her granddaughter, who I know she didn't remember beforehand, but she just starts talking about, that's so great. She's so smart. What's she going to be doing? Blah, blah. And we talked about that for 15 minutes and everything else went away. And you could just see, you could hear the joy and see the love in her eyes, even though there was some missing, I know, but it was still, there was love there. And just being able to draw that out is the best thing about it.
And I would say, I think we're both, if you would agree, I think we're both pretty practical in the fact of this is just what it is. So I tend to more look at how can I jump in and how can I help and what can I do, which may not always be the, in the long run, the healthiest response. But I think for me, that's how I deal with it is, okay, let me get the appointment scheduled. Let me help you figure this out, Mom. Let me do this. And for me personally, that's helpful for me. I think listening to some of the people in our group, it's just being able to vent and share and be able just to sort of get it off your chest and know that there are other people who can relate. Because I do think that was one of the whole reasons why we started this, the group and have expanded it, is that people just don't talk about it. And so because of that, we feel like we're the only ones that are going through this, when the reality is if you asked anyone around our age, and even older or younger, everyone has a story, whether they saw it with their parents taking care of their grandparents or their current grandparents or their parents, whatever it is, everybody has a story and somebody in their family that they had a challenge with. And so I think it's having, certainly finding the people that you can share this with and who understand it, because sometimes you just need to say it. They can't fix it, but sometimes you just need to say it, and it makes you feel better to know that others are going through similar situations. So finding that support, I think, is important.
Do you find that some people wrestle a little bit with guilt because, you know, they're feeling frustrated and fed up at the moment with what they're trying to do with their parents?
Oh yeah,
For sure.
definitely.
Yeah.
For sure. Because we think, okay, it's our parents, we need to do these things. Yet I'm trying to work. And I mean, I don't always have the most patience with my mom, and that's something I have to struggle with. And Mike's always like, you know, like elbowing me like, hey, be nice. Because it's just like, because I just get frustrated. Like we just had that conversation, or we've had that conversation 15 or 20 times. And then I have to remind myself, this is maybe the only thing she's thinking about. And she's thinking about it over and over and over and over again, where I've got all this other stuff that I'm doing. So I think that then it makes me feel guilty to say, oh gosh, now I feel terrible because I don't want to make her mad or sad because I got impatient with her.
Well, and you also have to realize that they're frustrated too.
Sure.
They don't like the fact that they're old, that they can't do this anymore. They can't do that anymore. I need help doing all these things. It's kind of embarrassing because of the physical part of it and maybe the medical part of it. It's just not fun. So how am I going to vent that? How am I going to get that out of my system? I'm going to blame whoever is with me. Kim, why do you, this drives me crazy that you're doing this. And she didn't do it. But you know, maybe her mom wants to blame her, you know, or maybe your parent wants to blame you. You're right there. So you're going to take the brunt of the blame. But you have to understand again that most of the time, it's not your fault. It's not something you did. Now, yes, if you've always had a bad relationship with mom because you're messy and she's clean and she's bringing it up again, okay, well, you may need to work on that. But for the most of the time, they're just frustrated and they're just venting, and they just it drives me crazy. I need to vent on somebody. It's going to be you, and you have to just accept it and move on. My mom, you know, stage 5 of Alzheimer's is not a good stage. It's a stage where a lot of venting comes out, where the Alzheimer's person gets really mad. And my mom got really mad, and it happened to be during basically the first year of COVID, where I would get on the phone and she would not let my dad talk on the phone by himself because she thought he was talking about her. So it was always on speakerphone on their iPhone. So I would call, or my dad would call me, and something would come up, and I'd say, yeah, my son's doing something because of COVID, or our daughter's doing something because of COVID. And I'd hear mom in the background say, what's COVID? And my dad would say, hon, it's that virus. And it'd be like that all of a sudden, because my dad's tired of answering that question all the time. My mom's mad because she doesn't remember. And why are you getting mad at me? And all this frustration comes out on both sides. And that's where, again, you've got to understand that the frustration comes out, and sometimes it's going to be on you.
And I would just add that there are situations where there are difficult relationships and challenging relationships where my mom is not showing appreciation, or she's being mean, or my dad is being mean. And so you feel that guilt of, I feel like I need to take care of them, but they're not making this very fun or very easy. And so I think we have people in the group all the time that talk about this. And I do think that one of the things that we hear so much about is that you do have to sometimes figure out what are the boundaries and what's acceptable, because and that's where it gets really tricky, I think. And that's where maybe you need to have, talk to a therapist, or you need to find somebody else who can be a little bit more objective, who can give you some hints and ideas, because I think that, or just find that other support or people who've gone through that, because that is a little different situation, right? Where that's somebody that's a really strained, difficult relationship that's been going on. And that makes it even harder to want to take care of somebody who's not really ever been, you feel like has never really been there for you. That's a really tough place to be.
Because you can't just look out for them. You've got to look out for number one, because you don't want to die too early because of what you're doing. And now suddenly the rest of your family is going to miss you.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Wow. Yeah. So many things. But I love it. It all comes back to support, doesn't it? It's just like with anyone who's a caregiver, you need to have the support around you so that you can be the best carer possible. But you want to be more than just a nice carer, though. When you're dealing with parents, you really want to give them the very best you can, don't you? But it's having that support around you so you can do it. So guys, it's just been incredible, the tips and the information and the work that you do. Could you please tell us about your group? How can people find you? Where can they find your group? I know that you've got a fantastic book available on your website. Could you just tell us about what resources you have to help people?
We have a website, which is probably the easiest place to go just to be able to get all the information, parentingagingparents.com.
Yep,
On the
that'll be
website,
below.
yes, thank
Yep.
you. And on the website, you'll see dozens of interviews that we've done about all different topics that with experts to try to help people just have a sense of what are the, oh, I didn't even know I needed to know about that. Or,
Yeah.
hey, here's some questions to ask. So the interviews are all there. There's also a button right on the homepage that takes you right to the Facebook group.
Yep.
And that way you can join, answer a couple of questions just so that we know you're a real person and that you're in the right place and can be able to answer those questions. And then we have a guide that we created sort of selfishly for me.
Yeah, it's called the Caregiver's Key, and it's basically a
Fantastic.
workbook to fill out yourself with everything you need to know about mom and dad. From passwords to bank account information to insurance information to the name of their doctors and name of their neighbors, everything under the sun. Because when something happens, and chances are it's going to, but when something happens, whether it's an illness, hospitalization, or even death, when that happens, it's going to be a crisis situation. And when you don't have that information, it makes it so hard to get things done. And again, when you have that, and when it's more than just the phone number to dad's attorney and dad's accountant, when it's other information in case you have to take care of things, then it's all right there, and you don't have to go hunting and searching around mom and dad's place to find all this information.
What a brilliant resource. I'm not doing this as a sales pitch either. I'm actually going to be going and getting that. I will be sending one to my dad, who's already quite organized, but he'll sit down and fill that all in the one document. And I'm going to make my husband sit down with me, and we're going to try and do one as well, because I can see what you're saying about it's so important. Like, I mean, I'm 56, he's in his 60s. It's important that we actually get this stuff written down now in our midlife season, really, isn't it? So, Dad, thanks for that.
Remember, it's a gift we can give to our children.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to thank you both for being with me today. You are doing such an incredible work, and I'm so appreciative of what you've shared with us, and I will definitely be looking forward to our next conversation about protecting our parents from scams. But thank you again, guys.
Our pleasure.
Okay, and there we go. Please make sure you go below. I'm going to have all the links for Mike and Kim's resources. Grab them, get onto their website, jump in their group. Seriously, if you truly want to rock your midlife, which is what we're all about, this is a part of it. Knowing what to do to look after our parents the best way possible. It's part of you rocking your midlife, because can you imagine the weight of when you know how to process the tragic event that we're all going to face at some point. So get out there today, make sure you subscribe, leave a review, and I will see you next time.